We are here today to talk about the Broker Responsibility Advisory Committee recommendation. This is a standing item on workshop agendas, and we have one to bring you today. And it is related to initial broker license, education, and experience requirements. And so we wanted, before we lay out what the actual recommendation is, to talk about the current requirements under the law. So the current requirements are twofold. There's an education requirement and an experience requirement to obtain your broker's license. So for education, a broker applicant has to have 270 hours of qualified real estate courses. Again, that's inclusive of real estate brokers. And then 630 hours of real estate related education. And again, that's going to be where the focus of the recommendations are coming from today. There's also credit for that 630 hours given if you have a bachelor's degree in any category or topic. And then there's also credit given for certain courses, certain defined areas for that 630. And then there's experience. You have to have at least 4 years of active experience during the 5 years preceding the application, totaling 360 experience points. And again, that's important to keep in mind. The 4 out of the 5 years, a lot of times you hear folks talk about 30 years of experience, but really when it comes to an applicant, we're looking at the last 5 years, 4 out of the 5 years of active experience. So just some background on this particular issue. So again, what the Broker Responsibility Advisory Committee has been tasked with, there's a long history with this, but essentially it's to look at the current requirements for an initial broker's license and to see if any changes should be made. So last session, Senate Bill 1577 gave the commission the authority by rule to determine education required to obtain a broker's license. We already had this authority, rulemaking authority for the experience side. We did not have this authority for the education side. That was set by statute. So with this change last session, we now have the authority to also set the education requirements. This has been an issue that has had a lot of legs. There's a lot of history with it. First, starting with the Broker Responsibility Working Group, 7, 8 years ago, I think. And now the actual committee, and that charge was to examine the requirements while keeping in mind that governor's directive to reduce barriers. Is that balance appropriate due to changes? So as you heard earlier today, the BRAC has a recommendation. And importantly, one of the things we talked about with the committee is we're really talking concepts at this point. Really want to get a sense of what your feelings are about these particular concepts. The details can be worked out. We do have some details built into some of this presentation, but that's more for example purposes. Doesn't necessarily have to be the final recommendation, but you'll see some of that in just a moment. Okay, so I'm going to get into the recommendation. Ty, feel free to weigh in as well. And then Denise is going to talk about the actual specifics. So when we're talking about this recommendation, we're actually not looking at any changes to the current minimum education requirements. But there are 3 changes to current experience requirements, and we're going to go through these. The main one, the other 2 are smaller changes, but the main one is to allow for the substitution of experience of up to 300 hours for the 630 hours of real estate related education requirements. So basically allowing some experience, if you have more experience, to substitute that for some of the education hours that are required. So up to 300 hours. We have a calculation here. 2 additional experience points equals 1 hour of real estate related education. That initially came from staff, and I'm going to have Denise kind of talk about what that actually means in a moment. But that's the calculation that we're working with in this example. The other recommendations are a little not, I guess, not as dramatic, but the second recommendation relates to just kind of calculations in the rule itself on the form. So the first is to change property management experience calculation to a per property per year calculation instead of just per property. The committee kind of bounced around a couple different terms that could be used, but basically instead of just counting the numbers of property managed, actually looking at that for a full year, and that's how you get the points associated with that particular transaction type. And then number 3 is to modify the brokerage management delegated supervisor calculation to a points per transaction model. So this would allow a delegated supervisor to obtain more substitute credit using the calculations we are going to present to you in a second than under the current calculation, what's currently in the rule. And the suggested point calculation, again, during the meeting, but doesn't necessarily have to be set in stone, was 3 points per transaction. So that is the framework. I'm now going to turn it over to Denise to actually explain what that means.
Ty, did we?
That is beautiful.
Okay.
That'd be wonderful, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Could have said it better yourself.
I did. No way.
Okay, so I'm glad Abby captured that correctly, which I was never doubted.
the test continues.
It just, the test continues, right? And so in a closed room, thankfully, with no other one besides Vanessa and Abby and I to kind of realize how much we needed to refresh our math. We took that calculation and came up with some examples. So this is a reminder, again, this would be after the 360 minimum experience points have been met. For someone who's primarily involved in residential sales, they would need 20 additional residential sales transactions over the last 4 out of the 5 years, or 5 residential sales transactions per year in order to get enough extra experience points to have 300 real estate related hours credited to them. The next example, and we did go through all of the ones that are listed on that Supplement A experience report, but for our presentation purposes, we just kind of picked the top 3. So for residential lease transaction, you'll see it requires 120 additional residential lease transactions or 30 residential lease transactions per year to get the 300 related hours credit. And for brokerage management delegate supervisor, and this is based on that proposed 3 points per supervised transaction, an applicant would need 240 additional supervised transactions or 50 additional supervised transactions per year to have 300 related hours.
Denise, do you want to tell them how it's currently calculated as far as the delegated supervisor?
Absolutely. Currently, it's based on number of months that the applicant is serving as a delegated supervisor. And so the check is how long that license holder, that applicant has had the checkbox marked by their broker that they are receiving. And so with that model of number of months, it doesn't allow someone who only has that delegated supervisor experience to get up to the 300 related education credit. So the change that Abby had mentioned previously of 3 points per supervised transaction, that would get them there with this number of additional supervised transactions. So one consideration is how this impacts less populous areas of the state. And I believe Chair Kestner submitted an email kind of with some examples of different surrounding counties and how many transactions were listed. I don't know the terminology.
You don't want to live in Alpine, Texas, okay?
Transactions were conducted.
Support stock.
And that's one of the documents that you just handed out.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
I've got a question on the residential transactions. The statute says, for instance, 4 of the last 5, but it can be 5 of the last 5.
It
So
can.
theoretically, you could have 4 transactions for the last 5 years and still you're 20.
Right.
Okay, very good. Okay.
Right, and that broker experience report,
How's my math?
that accounts for that. They can list years 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and spread that experience out. However they're claiming it, it can encompass a 5-year period.
And the supervisor, 3 points. Basically, in order to get credit for a closed transaction, they've supervised 10 transactions. I mean,
See, now you're testing.
well, no, a closed transaction is 30 points, correct? residential.
Yes. it can
And so
go
they'd have to
points.
supervise 10 transactions to get the credit for that one. That's probably fair.
My understanding of the committee's recommendation is that it's just 3 points per supervised transaction, regardless
Right.
of the type.
But in order to get the same as a closed transaction, you'd have to supervise 10.
For like a sales agent, he's
Yeah.
comparing the two.
Yeah. That's not,
And my thought is, Scott, on it, is when we were talking about it, my thought is that if you're a supervisor, and even in a smaller town, you're probably managing multiple people. So you can get there in the 4 or 5 years. It can help you get to that point, count that you need to become a broker.
there's another slide, or is that it?
There is.
For my-
Okay.
There is. So really what we'd like, is just some direction that we can take back to, the committee. So, next steps, do you support these recommendations generally? Again, not necessarily specifics, but just concept at this point. If so, we can begin working on initially rule drafts, to present to the committee in April for review. And if not, we can relay this in any further direction that you'd like us to provide.
I am fine with it. The only thing I question is I listened to the meeting is we have 5 supervisors, well, 4, we're about to have a 5th supervisor. And my name goes on every contract in El Paso. But if I'm at a TREC meeting, they know they can go to the other supervisor. Well, is the supervisor gonna have to be named? If not, I'm naming 2 supervisors on my, does that make sense? Even though they might not supervise that one transaction, they're responsible if I'm not available. And I don't want to have to start divvying up agents. You report to Mark, you report to Chance, you report to Leslie. They all report to me. But if I'm unavailable, they have the other supervisors that they can go to. And I'm wondering how that's going to be worked out.
Well, I think we've discussed this, maybe it might have been a few committee meetings prior, where at the end of the day, it's the sponsoring broker is still signing off
Very
in
good.
that supplemental form, certifying that that experience was obtained by the applicant. So however that works, I'll call it on the back end, because that's not the side, the TREC is as, well, I'll speak for myself, as familiar with. But if the broker certifying that that's the experience that the applicant is claiming, and the transaction detailed spreadsheet does require, I think that was a few committee iterations ago, to add role and transaction as part of that transaction listing that has to accompany the broker application and the experience report.
All right. Love it. Second question. All the points do not have to be spread out over the 4 or 5 years, correct?
I think that's just the minimum. We were doing the
Okay.
minimum.
I have a lady licensed, got her license, so she can hit the button to pay property managers. I will eventually put her into property management. And so she will manage 400 and something properties, whatever. She will get a lot of points in 2 years. Does that make sense? And it doesn't have to be so many over the last 5 years.
Yeah. So, the minimum is for just licensure in general is 4 out of the 5. One thing that kind of a limitation on the calculations is that we did just do straight across the board calculations. We didn't mix, you've got some property management, some sales, that kind of analysis, just for ease, honestly. But you can get points in different areas, just like you can for the initial broker's license as well.
Well, I'm concerned with the smaller areas, but my biggest concern, I think me and Chance have the same concern, is let's get it to the commission. And at least if you're in Fort Stockton, Alpine, or Snyder, you know what the rules are.
Yeah,
Comment on.
I think also, I know when I was on broker responsibility and also this BRAC up until last meeting, I think we've talked about maybe adjusting the experience points. I think that still needs to be discussed prior to coming out with a rule. And I think we also need to go and solicit comments on all of it, because I know we have 42 pages of comments saying it's too easy to get a license. So I think we need to address that instead of just changing the pathway. We need to listen to what people are saying.
We can't listen until it's proposed.
We did listen because we have 42.
We have 42 pages not on TREC's comments,
Yes, we do.
42 pages of TREC comments.
Yes, we do.
Based on what?
we asked people about, we did a survey.
But
on
if we
this.
propose it, it goes out
You're
to
not listening to
everybody.
me.
I am listening.
We did a survey and it was 42 pages of people making recommendations. And a lot of it said, we need to increase the experience to get a license, a broker license. It was 42 pages of it. It's been in in our materials. So I think we need to listen to that as well before we go for just this. We need to get the whole picture together.
We have been surveying since 2019 on
Okay,
this.
stop.
We need to get something proposed. Let's get it proposed.
With you. We had 42 pages.
Get it proposed.
So looking back at the history of this discussion, right? And I don't remember if it was when Leslie was chair of the working group or when I was chair of the working group. The initial stimulus for the conversation was there was an unlevel playing field if you had a college degree in getting a broker's license, right? And so at that time, we went about changing the scoring system. We removed the cap on management. We should have done better math and realized that it still wouldn't have done shit. You couldn't have gotten a license anyway. But we should have done a little bit better math in that regard. But we moved the cap on management. We did a couple of things to try to increase. We dropped to 0 because math is hard enough. You don't need to add more zeros to it. And we simplified the scoring system. And then we were hoping for rulemaking authority that would allow us to go back in to level the playing field for education. And the thought process was, if you have a college degree, it shouldn't give you an advantage towards getting a broker's license over somebody who does not have a college degree. I don't think that this proposal levels the playing field. I still think this is if you have a college degree, it's a hell of a lot easier to get a broker's license than if you don't, you have to also sell a shit ton more real estate. And I don't think we've achieved the original objective, which is level the playing field, whether you have a college degree or not. Everybody gets the same amount of.
Why would you want to level the play? I mean, wouldn't a college degree give you a better?
I don't think so. I have 2, and neither of them have ever really helped me in real estate.
That wasn't the objective when I was chair of broker responsibility. The objective was it only takes you pretty much 2 transactions or something a year to get a broker's license. And everybody felt that was too small. And so the objective was originally that we were going to double those points.
Right.
And then we were going to use this alternative pathway to show that it's not a barrier to entry, that we're trying to make it feasible to get there in other ways as well.
Well, the original conversation was we were going to take the education hours from 900 down to like 600 or 630.
Yeah, it was a lowering and
Lowering,
then like
and
a
it was
doubling
an
basically.
increase of the experience points. And the offset to the Office of Professional Responsibility that we were going to use was we've set a level playing field for education. We've increased experience points. The idea being we would prefer to have brokers who actually know what the heck they're doing in the field as opposed to brokers who are really good at sitting in a classroom.
But a lot of the comments said they didn't want education lowered.
I mean,
They didn't want education.
just given the historical,
Yes.
I'm just giving the
saying a lot of
historical
comments
perspective
said They
of-
did not want education lowered, but they agreed with more experience.
It's raised.
I would agree that experience.
and I agree. I just think that that's a barrier to entry and we're not.
Well,
we're
yeah, I
not
think
water.
But that's why they were doing this, is to help with that barrier to entry.
Right, but my point goes back to, you don't need that if you have a college degree. Now you're saying if you don't have a college degree, we're gonna give you a path, but only if you sell more real estate. Then all things being equal, if you had 2 identical agents, one of them has a college degree and one of them doesn't. This one's still being punished for not having a college degree under this
I
proposal.
don't think this is just for college degree. Do you?
Well, the college degree is
We get
automatic.
replacing education.
Automatic credit of
Oh,
what
yeah,
you need.
right.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's to replace that. I think this benefits a lot of other people as well that have,
When we initially, when we actually talked about removing the college degree, that was my determination, is I wanted to remove the college degree. I still don't think it's a bad idea, just being real with you. The issue is it a lot of the college credits, if you even go and just take college courses, a lot of them will apply towards what's already listed in qualifying curriculum for
Real estate.
Yeah,
commission.
which is fine.
So That's a good thing.
But for somebody who hasn't taken those, I don't feel like they should be.
Right. So do you think, Chance, can I ask you just point blank, do you think we should just remove any type of college credit at all?
I mean, if it was the Chance Brown Real Estate Commission, yeah. But I also realize that that's not realistic.
Right.
Most licenses require education,
I get it.
experience, and exam.
Right.
And
You're
so
gonna get
those are,
those three, combination of those three.
this wouldn't change anything. It just wouldn't be college education. I mean, ours still does that too.
Well, I think to your point, I think you're right that as I remember the initial conversations, it wasn't, I think the college degree conversation has been around since all of this started, right? But I think ultimately, the hypothetical I remember hearing is this person wants to get their broker's license, they don't have a degree, and the amount of time and effort it takes for that person to get the education component is pretty significant, right? And so the question, as I recall it being presented, was, is there a way to toggle? We have the highest education hours, I think, in the nation, if that's still true. At one point it was, I think it still is. Do we lower some of that real estate related education and allow those who don't have that degree a little less time to get all those hours in? And then you raise the experience, because I don't think anyone disagrees that experience gets you everywhere in your job. That's where you truly learn. You can go to school all you want, but you truly learn the job in the field. So like the college degree thing, I think is, okay, let's set it aside. I thought the question really was, for those who don't have that degree, how can we lower the education but still ensure competency through the experience side of things? And so what we have right now with this recommendation is we've got, we didn't do that toggle like I just did, right? We didn't lower education and raise experience, which I think that was a recommendation of at least the last two. This group has looked at something a little bit different, which is keep this the same. And I'll pause on experience for a sec. Let's keep experience and education the same. And let's create an alternate path where someone who doesn't have the degree can substitute some experience up to 300 hours of the real estate related education, right? So I think alternate path is a good way of saying it. Ultimately, this hasn't changed. And it sounds like what Commissioner Lerner is saying is she doesn't think that this is a full recommendation at this point, because there hasn't been a recommended change to experience. And I don't know that, I defer to you on that, Ty, because it's your committee, as to whether there's contemplation. I thought.
There is.
Okay, well then I think that's gonna 100% change your entire recommendation, right?
Well,
Well, 100%, I shouldn't
Well,
say
yeah.
that. It's
the issue is that when we left the college degree piece alone, and then we talked about increasing experience, we said that basically what the issue is, we would be creating an additional barrier to entry.
If we increase experience, right?
Right. So if we go back, I'll just throw this out there. If we go back and we lower education, increase, say we double experience, then essentially maybe that would be a better option.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the college degree. I understand that. My question is, the way it's proposed now, you've got to have the minimal points here, and then extra closings or points goes toward the education. I think it's where, I don't think we've lowered it, but there's a path. I don't think it's an easier path, because you still have to get the 360 points or whatever, and then plus extra points to offset the education. It hasn't made it easier, but yet at the same time, they've got to have more experience.
But the only person that it benefits is the person that doesn't get all the credit for their education.
Right. No, you're exactly right. Yeah.
And that was the original intent of the conversation.
So getting back to Vanessa's toggle rate,
Mhm.
a college degree would be the equivalent of how many transactions?
630. Oh,
It just gets you all your
It
education.
gets all your hours.
Well, it gets you all your, so you still have to take, generically speaking, there's like the real estate courses that we require. And then there's this other component of the, I think it's 630, is that right? Of real estate related education. A college degree satisfies all 630 hours of that. And then there are some courses that we've automatically said, I'm gonna make this up, but like this accounting class you took at community college, that's a go. You can do that. Like we have some that automatically, and I believe we always,
Degree.
that for people who don't have a degree, we will do a little bit of a survey.
The transcript.
How does accounting help you with real estate? I mean, other than.
Well, I think it's this idea that there's like the math. I mean, I made up accounting. I don't even know if accounting.
Certain topics and there's certain college course topics that have been deemed to qualify as real estate related.
In
And
accounting?
that's done through rules. So there's.
In accounting?
a rule right now that-
I
So
don't
my-
remember any.
I don't know the list.
I mean, I made up accounting, to be clear. I don't know the list either, but I know there's a math side to it because there is a math side to
Maybe you know
real
why
estate.
it's not
I took
important to you.
accounting for 12 years. I know my stuff. I'm kidding. That was a joke.
No, but here's the thing. Maybe, just maybe, if you had that accounting course, you wouldn't be doing things with escrow money and whatnot. You'd understand a little
Well,
more.
to me, they're very separate and distinct
Yeah.
things.
Well, I made up
But
accounting.
the point being, if you've got agent
It is
A
one.
and agent B and everything about them is equal, except that agent A has a college degree, agent A gets a broker's license, agent B doesn't.
But we will give you credit for some courses.
And that's the problem.
So this was legislated years ago, I guess, right?
No, I think this has just been I'm not gonna say age old, but a long time coming question of, okay, we know we've got we've got the highest number of education hours required for a license in the nation, right? And we know that there are folks who without a degree have had to work to get
Yeah.
all of those hours, and it's taken some of them years. And in that interim, I mean, they've been doing transaction after transaction as an agent. And so the thought is, and it's that discussion point of like, okay, I think about this for me. I graduated from law school. I didn't know how to be a lawyer. What taught me how to be a lawyer truly was being out there in the field. And I think everyone in here can argue that about their job, right? Just because you get the job doesn't mean you're an expert. It's those years of experience. So the question was, okay, we know we're real high here. Can we bring that down a little bit for the person who's got to work without the degree, the person who's got to get all 630 of those hours, which is time consuming, and then raise the experience. So that way, I think, I mean, I'm doing this, but I think what it maybe
I
is out to
get
for
that.
that
I guess
person is about.
one
This would
question-
be a legislative issue.
Yeah,
One second.
We got the rulemaking. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we got
Yeah.
rulemaking authority to determine the education piece of it,
Yeah.
because before we've always had the experience piece.
yeah.
And so this
Well,
is really hoping to write the rules.
But to your example, I don't know if this is, but it's like, but are the docs, lawyers, and accountants going to think about that when they're talking about experience? Or will they say, well, college doesn't matter as much? And
But everybody has gone to college.
What's a requirement for the
Yeah, it's a
license?
minimum.
well, that's my point is I'm just, a devil's advocate here, I mean,
We're-
you can't,
We're in the middle. It's not a requirement, but it gets.
well, we are in the middle. I'm just saying.
No, I mean, in the middle of that debate, like for a lawyer and accountant, you have to have the degree, right? And so here it's like, if you have the degree, it gets you there, but you don't have to have the degree.
Right. So I'm just, of course, devil's advocate is I wish, that it was tougher, not easier. And for a variety of reasons, which we don't need to talk about today, but that's the only part
Well,
that,
tell him what you want it to be.
October 15th.
I think I think having a path is good. I'm just,
Degree listed related courses.
You did.
So Vanessa, let me ask you a question. Maybe I'm not getting this. So there are some courses that realtors to get or need to be licensees have to take, right?
Mhm.
That's apart from college, right?
That's the 270 of qualifying.
Okay.
That's like truly real estate
That's
classes.
a two, everybody has to have.
Everybody's got to do
minimum,
you
right?
got to do that.
Yeah, okay. And then you've got the college, which you say gives you credit for how many hours?
All of them, 6:30.
The education.
The additional 6:30.
One is the 270, that's everyone is required to take.
Oh, that's backwards.
And the 630 is related real estate education, and the 630.
So if I have an accounting degree, I don't have to take my
If you have a
270?
No, you do.
Yeah, you
You have to do
do.
the 270.
Yeah, the accounting
Everybody
degree gets
does
you to the
have to
6:30.
do, does the.
It's
do-
the 630 your accounting degree get waived.
So
Yeah, the 630 only applies when you're talking about the broker license.
Hmm.
then the other thing that.
Yeah,
they
everything
discussed
else
was
is-
Get rid of the college blanket degree thing and just do real estate related courses is another thing they've done.
That makes sense
Yeah.
to me.
I agree.
That with the with experience, you're there.
Well, can you pull up the website that shows the classes that will count toward, if you don't have a degree, classes that count toward real
I
estate?
think we
So
talked about.
you might
choice.
remember last time we had one of these workshops, I told the story of Brian Sales, the vice chair, who had 55,000 points experience by the time he got the 930 hours.
And that's.
But the part I didn't tell about that is, in the meantime, he got his wife licensed. Had her, put her on his transactions for 4 years, and she got the broker's license and is still the broker for his company.
Yeah.
Because she had a college degree
It's
and
easier.
had to wait, she didn't have to take all the
She
classes.
was actually licensed before. Brian.
Didn't we also talk about maybe tweaking
Yeah.
some of the courses or adding?
He got
to
her
or
the
something?
broker's license because
The
it was gonna take him.
problem-
Some of the real
degree
estate.
is so-
courses.
I mean, I can go get an English degree.
So like,
Think
look,
about
we're
it.
gonna reevaluate.
Yeah. You can actually get. the
Yeah.
college.
But
And the conversation in the meeting, the conversation in the broker responsibility meeting was, just because I have an art history degree, doesn't mean that it's not
All right,
useful.
let's separate this in two groups, okay? We're looking at education, getting rid of the bachelor's degree. There is a list of classes that if you take will count towards your hours without a degree. Okay? And one is accounting, business ethics, anyway, that's what will count without a degree now. Okay? Real estate law, finance, she's just moving it just up and down, so I can't.
Okay. Go back up.
Anyway, those are the classes. If you don't have a degree, they will count toward your hours, okay?
you're 690.
Are those bachelor's degrees or what are those?
No, these are just classes.
Courses, okay. I can tell you that principles of accounting, bookkeeping, income tax, and managerial have nothing to do with real estate.
But you don't think it has anything to do with
Like
it?
running a brokerage and the.
So this, which that's great information because this,
But we're
Brad
talking
was
about.
also
not
talking
for
about
real estate.
tweaking.
Not for real estate
doing a
sales
review of that.
Not talking about real sales.
Okay, now you're talking about broker. Oh,
Okay,
This only applies.
to brokers.
that's the education.
Okay.
Leslie, on the
Yes, then it
points,
is applicable.
experience. How many points?
They were talking about doubling the points as it is now.
So doubling the points.
So instead
700.
of two transactions per year, it would be like 4 point something.
Doubling the points.
Which the
Lowering,
concern would be in that, and the kickback we got when we initially put out the original scoring redo came almost entirely from the commercial world,
Yeah.
right? Where you might not do 4 transactions a year.
But then, I mean, that's the ease of this because you can adjust commercial and residential. It's not a blanket thing that you have to do.
but part of this that we've got to remember as we're factoring in is this idea of barriers to entry. And so we accept the college degree and we have for at least, I'm going to generically say about at least 12 years. I'm basing this off of Denise's tenure here. But I think it even
Well,
goes back
I will tell you,
further.
it goes back at least 35. But
Okay,
But-
great.
Let me,
But-
just
Yeah.
1 point. When you say quote unquote, accept the college degree for CPAs, it's not the accounting degree. It's the courses.
it's
that
the courses, yeah.
It's the underlying courses. And I think what you all need to do is define the courses that you would honor as part of
But
the
that is a huge diversion.
Yeah, as far as the
Different.
college degree, because if you get somebody with, an art degree or a degree in Spanish,
That's what I.
oh,
You make them lawyers.
You make
or
them
a
look.
degree in law.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No,
I
but the
know
law
how
would be
to
heavily
vote.
weighted, I would think.
Yeah, but it's
For
still
that.
in the barrier to entry because people can get in the business.
Right now, for at least 35 years, a lot of, I mean,
define the hours and the class.
No, but I'm saying,
A college degree has gotten you there.
but being a licensee is getting into the business and there's no obstacle to entry here. We're all agreed on the 270.
Yeah.
All this is talking about is
$630.
if you want to
Get
get
a
to be a
broker's
broker's license.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm not sure that distinction will be made.
Well, why not? I mean,
Well, I mean, okay, will be accepted by regulatory compliance, but
no, I'm just asking a
License
question.
you can always try. Yeah, there.
Yeah.
So the question I would have for regulatory compliance then would be, you set this mandate to give opportunity to people who don't traditionally go down the college path to have licensure across the state of Texas, right? Not just inside of TREC. That was the idea of the mandate. Texas is open for business, right?
Yeah.
So we're doing that by leveling the playing field for anybody, whether you have a college degree or not. You just have to know what the hell you're doing.
If you,
Have the experience.
Even the playing field for education. Take away the college degree credit and then up the experience points.
When I look at the notes from the July meeting, BRAC meeting, and I'd have to go back and look at that survey that was done, I wrote down that people wanted college hours awarded to be real estate related.
Okay, that's back to your point. And I think that's,
Yeah, but to your point, Mark, you're running a business, so you're gonna need accounting, you're gonna need law, you're gonna need marketing, you're gonna need.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think there's an aspect to this. If you're talking about the broker, which we are,
broker, that's what we're talking about.
that, these folks need to have a little more background if you look at why you would be a broker.
So let me play devil's advocate here. For somebody that doesn't have a college degree and didn't have an accounting, a law, or a marketing, or any of those courses, they're barriered out. They'll never get those courses.
Well, I'm not saying we should, I'm in favor of creating a path,
Yeah, no.
but I'm saying you're not forever, and under this proposal, you wouldn't forever be
Yeah, you
barred out,
You
right?
have to work under a broker.
You have to
And
work.
you get the experience.
I mean, I think it's gotta be a combination because, I mean,
Well, I mean, for a college course, I know it's only, let's say it's 3 hours school, but it's still counted as a 30-hour for license requirements, right? I mean,
Like the semester hours
Yeah.
versus, I mean, I'm gonna generically say,
yeah,
there's.
so
yeah,
what I'm
different
saying is you're never even today more than 20 classes away. No, excuse me, 30 hours,
Yeah,
20 classes away from getting it. I mean, that's worst case scenario.
College
That being
class.
that-
20 college.
Well, yeah,
classes.
that's the number that Denise had given us.
Yeah,
I think-
so I'm saying you go to
I
community
think-
college, you go
I think
wherever.
you need to find a way to toggle between education and experience, and don't define education in terms of a degree, but in terms of specific college courses that they
Well,
have.
I don't think it says degree, does it?
So
It does.
Well,
it's a,
It
so
does?
and this is the,
Because you have to send your transcript.
it has.
this
both.
is the
Yeah.
calculation.
And then
Yeah, that's
and
what
then
they do it at the CPA.
It's
place.
100.
They go to the transcript and say, okay, we got the principles of accounting,
Yeah.
1, 2,
Ended up being
intermediate.
that.
But in this case, it
It's
is.
like
The things for-
35%
Chance. Remember
Yeah,
when
'cause
we
that's
looked at
what
this, we looked at the college degrees and then we said, hey, look, if we go in there and we just take out college degree and we only count the courses, because we did talk about that. We did.
We
propose
did,
that.
for sure.
Yeah, and we said, well, there's so many of the college degrees that already have all this information in it. So we said, okay, just leave the college degree because there's such a vast number of classes.
No, because you're gonna get a mix.
You even at one point said, only if you have a college degree in real estate.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
We
you
did
have to
say
leave the degree out because some
I think
people
you
go
look
to
at the
college
class.
3 years,
Degree.
take the courses and never get the degree.
Well, those courses can be credited.
Yeah.
Well, those go down.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're
But
never
right now,
20 away.
so if you, I'll just say this, if you remove the degree component of giving people the license with the degree, then you are, I'm gonna say this, you're making it potentially more difficult to get access into the broker world. Like you did allow this pathway, but now you're taking it away.
No, because now you don't need a degree. Now you just need specific hours. So now you can toggle between experience and education.
You still can do that right now.
But
Yeah,
there's no
Because it
degree
says both.
requirement.
Right.
No.
There's
Right
no
now you have
degree
college
requirement,
degree.
right?
No, right now, if you don't have a college degree, but you have a transcript that shows that you took these classes, you can still get credit for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even
Yeah,
if
you
a
can do
college degree
both.
is basket weaving.
Yeah.
You have 278 hours on your first renewal, plus 18 hours a year for 5 years. It's not like you don't have the education. What I'm concerned with is the experience.
Yeah.
Because what's happening is I don't need a broker's license to run a business. I find someone to sponsor my business through an LLC.
Yep.
And I'm running a brokerage and I have no broker license. That's why the education, I'm fine the way it is if you want more experience. I mean, because you're not like 4 years from now, 5 years from now, you're not just getting a broker's license with no education. You've taken the 278, then 18 at least for 5 years. And then the 360 points of experience, which,
So you say we're
The
focused.
problem with that is,
well, I mean, I don't think any of it's wrong. I just think you have people who've been licensed a long time doing 30 or 40 transactions a year and do not have a college degree and can't get a broker's license.
And I think the degree part ends up being, red herring is not the right word, but it's kind of like all right,
It's a second.
yeah, that's
Well, you
another
can
thing.
always- it-
Ultimately,
And
it's,
to that point, you can always say from this point forward. I mean, anybody that's again done historically in other professions. It's like, hey, from this point forward, anybody that's already in and blah, blah, blah like that, they can.
So education's got to be tweaked, is what you're saying.
to me, it does.
Okay.
Because otherwise, I think
Well, I don't know that.
otherwise,
I
I
don't
think if
know
you
that-
only tweak experience and you tweak it up, all you've done is create a barrier to entry.
right, that was the reason for the toggle, which is, and I'm not even sure it would be accepted, but I think you can have a better argument of saying, no, we didn't make it harder. We actually made it easier because we've lowered the education, which we know is a barrier for those who don't have the degree. And we've raised the experience, which is what we've seen the folks who don't have the degree, who have to work, done the education, they typically come in with more experience than is, whatever,
We took
whatever
the
that argument
comments
is.
that we have and took those to the governor's office. And was like,
Right.
Hey, you've got this, you got people screaming to make this harder. And
But
there
you-
are people who actually know what the hell they're doing.
But you also don't have I don't know that you've got the data to support eliminating, I don't think you do have the data.
Well, there's
I think-
also a problem if comments come from current license holders because then there's a perception of, I think the phrase is pulling the ladder out behind you. So that makes the argument a little.
Well, I think consumers would tell you they think people need more.
And that just goes to Vanessa's data point. We don't have that. We have the comments from.
Which I would agree with. I mean,
Let's just face it, in some professions, you need expertise. And when it comes to the public, you need that high bar. I mean, barriers to entry to me is, I don't want just any attorney to take on my case. I want somebody that is competent and has demonstrated competency through experience, exam, and education, right? And so I think when the state uses, we want to lower the barriers to entry, I don't think they're talking about the professional lawyers, CPAs, real estate agents, those type of licenses, because
Well,
you
We
have
got
to.
that letter.
right.
I know, but
And I, just to play devil's advocate on that point, we have the highest education requirements in the country. And we don't have any data saying that the way that Texans are served is more elevated than they're served elsewhere. Now, I think from those who know what a good real estate experience looks like, you can never have too much experience in education to just, because you want
Chelsea.
a quality license.
Chelsea, if we have the highest barrier to entry, then why do we have 236,000 licensees?
That's a reasonable point. I mean, both of those facts are true.
yeah.
It's not a barrier.
Correct.
I mean, of the
Well,
1.5 million, we've got
brokers.
239.
But
Or
we
the
have
numbers that you have.
significantly less brokers. What's our broker
You
number?
have
You said it
lots
this
of
morning.
47.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah, and
Well, again, that we're off track a little bit here, but to the larger point,
You know, that
I mean,
lowering the bar. You.
I agree.
I don't
I
like
I
You're
agree.
gonna get in
that
trouble.
what they're gonna do before we propose it. So
At
I'd
the
like to
very
know
least,
before
I
they're
would-
told.
I would recommend to leave everything the same and just create a pathway for someone, for like what Scott mentioned, that never went to college, never got college credit, but has been in the business for.
I think that's pretty close to, if not exactly what we have. Yeah.
So I think that's the path, and the only limitation there
We agree.
is that by statute, we can only look back 5 years, 4 out of the 5 years. We can't look back and count the 20, 30 years of experience, and that's just by
'Cause
statute.
education is forever. You hold your education forever, but your experience has to be within 4 of the last 5 years.
Relevant and recent.
That's right.
Yeah. Exactly.
I forgot everything I learned in college.
Some of the studies,
Let's talk about minimum, talk about minimum.
well, some of the studies today say by the time.
I barely
you're
remember.
junior, you have to
That's what
But-
Brack is gonna decide.
But the only.
Maybe we would give them some guidance.
If
They were talking about.
agencies like ours are around to protect the consumer,
That would be minimal then.
if that's what our mission is.
Double, but 720.
That's sort of antithetical to, let's make sure we don't have more business. We don't keep the lid on the number of practitioners or not. I mean, because,
It's hard to get all those pieces to,
yeah, because the reality of it is that consumers would be better served with 150,000 than 240,000 by and large. I mean, because if they were people that were experienced doing the business, not just head count, but I mean, and when you look at all the data, I mean, the number of people that don't ever hit a lick speaks to that.
Yeah, I agree, Mark, but you also have to realize we've got a large team in El Paso. And he's number one with a large franchise till he left the franchise. He's got 25 licensees that will never sell a house
Yeah, I know.
because they're all under him. So.
I get it.
And that's, and you know that, yeah.
I mean, I'm just kind of making an editorial comment here that,
But that's
that
their choice.
it's,
Right, but I'm just saying, when you say
none of that helps the
They have the
consumer.
opportunity.
Yeah.
80% of the people do not sell more than one house.
As regulators, you're not in to limit the number of people that can obtain a license. You just need to make sure the people who obtain the license meet the requirements. But to go back to this rec, it's essentially nothing changes with current education or experience requirements, but there's this alternate pathway. Commissioner Lerner's brought up this idea of perhaps a discussion needs to happen as it relates to increasing experience.
Yep.
And to the extent that that conversation happens, then I think that feedback's got to go back to the committee before any rule changes can be made, because
Agreed.
they'll need to come back with that. Now, I will just mention, you are then increasing the requirements. You're not toggling. So if let's say they're going to double it, that's been the number that's been historically there. So but instead of making that education toggle, it would be double experience. Education is the same. And then there's a pathway that'll get you up to 300 hours of education.
I thought we said that we were gonna allow an alternate pathway, which included no education.
It's
That's all.
experience, but the experience will sub for 300 of the 630 hours,
Not all of it.
not all of it.
Let's,
So really what you've done there is you've given that pathway to the 630, but you have also doubled the requirements on obtaining the license.
Vanessa, there's one thing I want to bring up though that's a very valid point. When we double experience points in we leave this program as it is, all of a sudden we've increased the percentage of transactions goes exponentially higher than what it is right now.
And you're,
So the math calculation then would either A, have to change,
yes.
B, evaluated, because this, in theory, would be really hard to obtain.
Yeah, it wouldn't actually be an
never-
alternate pathway
would
at that
not be.
point.
It
It'd
would
be
be-
impossible.
Yes.
Yeah.
It'd be really hard.
Can I
That's true.
ask for, if we could put them in silos, like college degree and then no college degree, kind of different combinations of how the pathways are, and see
Like
See,
a,
in tabular format, like, one column is with a college degree, no college degree, or a combination of both. So that we can see and do quick math on how someone would, take
we could
different.
do some examples. Yeah. I mean, obviously the combination's always going to be.
I don't
versus-
hate, I don't hate the idea of getting rid of the college degree element, but leaving the coursework element.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't hate
I would
I
agree
don't
with
hate that at all.
that. No.
Okay.
And that is going to change your,
relevant coursework.
but
Right.
that is going to, I mean, I'll
But that
just,
list could use some paring
Fine-tuning.
down.
Yeah.
it's going to change your
That's not
turnaround,
formula.
your license turnaround, right? If you're examining everyone.
Yes, if every transcript is being reviewed for relevant coursework as opposed to currently that first step is look for a degree that's been awarded. If it's been awarded, then that satisfies the 630 related. So if the shift is to go through the transcript and identify all of the relevant courses, that could impact the amount of.
Denise,
That's just a
one thing-
consideration.
One thing you
AI can
mentioned
do that.
was.
Yeah, that's
not all
exactly
the
what I
courses.
just said.
We can't.
Right, so it is harder.
Yeah.
What Ty mentioned is that not all the courses are named the same. So if there is a question of, is this relevant, then it involves, I don't know if she's still in here, Jennifer Wheeler, Director
about
of
to join.
Education Examinations. So in some cases, when the applicant responds and is insistent that there's more coursework there that's relevant, then it goes to someone on the education team to request additional documentation, a course outline, syllabus, more supporting documentation to show that it is relevant to real estate. And that happens now when we're reviewing a transcript that does not have a degree.
I think it might be, I mean, this is just me talking, but it might be interesting to hold that in reserve, like kind of a back pocket. Like if you simplify what BRAC is doing right now to the toggle and to talk about experience and you move forward that way, because I know there's some desire to like move on something and see how the dust settles with it. Like, does that change your numbers? Does it make it easier for a population that is needing that ease or that we're wishing to make easier? And then next, consider what would happen
Look.
if we eliminate the degree on all the considerations.
Well, that's a
Because it
good
really
point.
is a
Let it,
thicket.
you can watch it play out.
Yeah, it feels
Real
like
time.
the
It's
same
like almost an-
conversation, but it's very much an aside.
Well, I was gonna say, I know
Okay.
one of the conversations.
All right.
One of the conversations that happened several meetings ago was that if the education hours were lowered, and you leave the degree to satisfy, the related hours, it will essentially count for less if there are fewer related education hours required to obtain the license, that it lessens the amount of weight that the degree carries without removing that as
That's a
as
great
a way to satisfy it. So that's another thing to keep in mind.
Could I throw out one more idea? The other idea would be, what if we limit the college degree actual credit itself? And we change it from 630 and we make it 300 and equalize it to this.
So you need
That's
a
kind of what,
college
that was the
degree plus-
original discussion.
And what
No,
if
no.
we
No
just
college degree.
propose that instead of,
The weight of education
Yeah.
overall?
Oh,
yes, and we instead of making it the 630, where you're not going to be able to wipe it completely out, but you're going to be able to get 300 hours. So it still requires some
Oh,
continuing
I see.
education.
Sorry.
You see what I mean? Some continuing
The maximum
education.
number of hours you can get, and it is X.
yeah.
Leaving you Y, you still have to go out
Which,
and get.
that's a consideration, but essentially what that does is increase what you have to do.
Uh-huh.
Now, for those who just needed the college degree to satisfy them.
But if
30.
you raise it to 720
Mhm.
and just for bare minimum, and you have to do 300, so many points over that to get the 300 hours. I mean, your producers are still gonna hit it. I'm fine with saying a college degree, you're not gonna count for 630, count for 300. I mean, you get the 300 and then you get another 300 with experience. But by then you have enough CE to count for it.
Yeah, I'm good with that right there. I think that
Yeah.
makes a lot of.
And that's not touching experience.
No, I think
No.
experience, I mean, if you want to double it, that's fine, but at least then you know what the college degree is. And that kind of, hey, you get rewarded for a college degree, no matter what it's in, but you still have to have
Okay.
600 hours of real estate.
Well, yeah, by the time you're done with the
And yeah,
270.
yeah.
Okay.
And then drop
That's-
330 on it, and that was where we,
And you're
that was
done.
basically where we were at the
All right.
beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the experience.
Now you're just capping the education given by virtue of the degree.
Right.
Right.
So 300 for that. Now.
And then you have the alternative path to get that for the people who are producers.
Do we double experience from, send it to them to propose 360 to 720?
I would do those as two separate things, by the way.
As far as the doubling experience points?
Yeah.
Yes.
Bring the
And then-
education piece, bring the experience piece.
I would,
Right.
I would take like the last 10 applicants and pro forma how they fall within.
But don't, Ty, don't put those together.
No, I get it.
I
So
want to, yeah,
Can
sorry.
you do that?
I need to make sure I understand what the,
so essentially
So
what
the
they're,
conversation will be education stays the same as it is right now,
630
right? 630, but your college degree
plus 270.
only plus 270.
900.
The college degree only counts towards 300 for 300 hours.
Yeah,
Okay.
lower that
You have to go get relevant education for the remainder, or
experience.
using the alternative path, get the credit.
Now you're toggling.
Or using the alternative pack of the credit and then not touching experience.
Not in that proposal, but if they want to bring a separate proposal to the commission that plays with experience points and an increase thereof, that's a separate proposal.
after the first proposal.
Okay.
The only change to
So a
that.
college degree would only get 300 as opposed to 630.
Then wouldn't you just submit your degree for as individual classes and you're probably going to get it every time?
Yeah.
That's
So
what
I would
they're-
just say, including individual classes and everything is
The
300.
maximum for college
Maximum for college
credit is
credit is
300 hours.
For any courses?
Any
Yes.
course.
So then
Yes.
people have to, then everyone's got to go take another 300
Exactly.
hours.
That's right.
Okay.
Or get it through the alternative path.
So we open up another pathway to get it.
Experience.
Yeah, I think, but you're opening up pathways, but you're also raising the requirements. So,
No,
No, we're lowering
it's
it.
the same exact number.
well, I think it's harder. I think it's significantly harder, and that's okay. I mean, we can send it to, I just know that from the temperature I have from that letter and what we hear back from the governor's office, we still have to be very mindful of that barrier increase. So I'm always hearing it from that perspective. And I think all of us are.
I
I
understand.
will be,
And that's-
I can make this argument to the
I get it.
governor's office for consumer protection.
I get it, but they sent that letter
See,
statewide
that-
and there's no way that
that's-
everybody fits in.
that's
that.
it.
There's other states that wouldn't.
This is a
care
That's all I'm
consumer
gonna say.
protection.
about that.
You're gonna get more qualified, more educated brokers taking the exam under this system than you have now.
And just taking the bare minimum classes, you're within 100 hours.
Yeah.
That's taking bare minimum.
Yeah.
And the brokerage.
You got it? Write it up.
I've got it. All right.
Write it up.
Let me, can I ask you all a question? May I call for a special meeting in between our last RAC meeting and our next one?
Yes, please,
Okay. I'm gonna do it.
please.
How do I do that, Vanessa?
Well, you could do two things.
Very careful.
Yeah.
Very careful. Yes.
We can set one up, but I mean, similar to what we did last
Yeah,
time, but I think you could also just change your agenda a little bit for
Be
the
regular.
real meeting and just tell everyone, hey, expect this to be a long meeting, right?
Yeah, I was gonna ask what's the goal of the,
Well, so I feel like we're able to move further if I can get in there and say, hey, this is what we got from the commissioners. This is what we've received. And at our next meeting, I want you to be prepared to talk about these items. And that we were really ready to prepared to talk about those items. And then I can make an actual proposal, hopefully after that meeting.
When is your next meeting?
Our next meeting is in April. I believe
Okay,
it's April.
before May.
I
Okay.
think you could split it up and do
Materials.
the education piece and then the experience piece in two different meetings like that.
Yeah,
And be
that's-
ready for.
I think the main thing I've got to address is the 300 hours and the 300 hours, everything we just spoke about, and get that set up. And then the rest we can talk about at the next meeting. I want to get this,
I mean, one thing we could do is, we can write this up and send it out now.
Okay.
so that
That way
people
everybody can
be
bring it to the
thinking about
April 8th
that
meeting.
For the April meeting.
Everybody
I mean,
can
not
read it.
now, but
Right.
in the next
Yeah, yeah,
week
yeah.
or so.
I understand.
And that way everyone
can
can be thinking about it for the.
Cogitate on it.
In the May meeting, y'all can be looking at the.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that can work because like the meeting, the interim
act like
meeting
you're
we
not
had
gonna
last
be here.
time, there had been like a specific task that was assigned and it was sort of
like you're not gonna be here.
more of a presentation conversation.
He's-
This is, I think, really all new. Like you're really gonna wanna
At
be in
least
the
part of
room.
it, yes, at
Yeah.
least part of it is new. So Abby, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Whew, well done, y'all.
Okay.
I don't know if we solved anything yet, but.
Let's get done.
I think you have
Well,
given
yeah.
feedback on what needs to happen next, which
Yeah.
was the
Yeah.
point of this.
Yeah, no, I think it's.
Yeah. We've been talking about this for a long.
Are you ready for the next agenda?
Yeah.
Okay.
old and stale.
It really does. I mean
I-
that. I mean that.
I get it.
I agree.
Okay.
All right.
Robust session. Everybody good? Ready for this
Yes.
update? Cool.
Right.
Great. So now the government relations part of my job. So as a few reminders, timeline reminders. So March 14th is the 60-day bill filing deadline. As of this morning, there are about 3,750 bills filed. So that's just gone up since we've been talking. We're tracking 215 of those bills. It'll go up when I check them later and see what's been filed. So on January 31st, I sent to the commission and board a report of some of the bills, of just a selection of the bills that we're tracking, not all of them, with a brief analysis about each one, just ones that we think you would want to know about. And I will continue to update that, but I wanted to see if you had any feedback about that report or if it was good and keep doing it or questions.
Did you want it to be more inclusive, less inclusive? Did it have the right information?
I thought it was,
I mean, wasn't here from you.
yeah, I mean, I like
That
it.
nerd out on.
I like it.
Great. Well, this isn't the only time you can give me feedback, so just let me know
Yeah.
as we move forward. So I was going to highlight a couple bills that have been filed since I did that report, and they'll be in the next report, but I wanted you to know now that we're aware. So one of them is HB 2349 by Darby. There's a companion, it's SB 1172. And the caption is relating to exempting certain transaction from regulation by the Texas Real Estate Commission. So essentially, this is defining other energy sources to include solar, wind energy, and that would mean that TREC doesn't have jurisdiction over individuals such as landmen who might do that activity. So you may recall last session, there was a bill that passed that kind of we were unsure about, and the AG's office said, yes, someone doing that stuff would need a wind in particular would need a license. So this would basically undo that. The next one is by Goodwin. It's HB 2422.
Hold on just a second. Does that make sense to y'all that wind, solar, the negotiation of those transactions would not be TREC governed? Yes?
I mean,
Feel like
I understand it. I don't know that I agree with it.
That you'll remember that a couple of years ago, this was a question, and we get that question to our enforcement division, what about the negotiation of wind? And we had always considered that as a mineral. And so that was the question brought before the AG's office. The AG said, it's not a mineral, but it would be TREC regulated.
It's land use.
And that was not what collectively the industry wanted the answer to be, wind industry. So now solar has kind of.
Yeah, I think it's the land.
Nuclear is also mentioned, hydroelectric, geothermal, and that's just including, it says including, so it's not even an exhaustive list. So imagine they would be able to. Right now,
So in statute in our 1101, our enabling legislation, individuals or transactions involving mineral or mining interests are accepted. What this bill would do is it would expand that exemption to apply to all of these other types of transactions involving other energy.
I want to sell mineral rights today.
Mhm.
I need a license.
You do not need
I
a
do not.
Do not.
But if you want to sell your wind right or your solar right.
on behalf of someone else for
Okay.
compensation.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you would need a license.
but nobody's been operating that way. So we're kind of trying to, or few. Sorry.
No,
And
I'm
is
glad
that-
you.
No, that's good
And is
clarification.
that because generally mineral rights are handled through attorney?
Or landmen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the land.
Either one, that's a
And you
junior
can
land.
do like.
We should say landmen and women, maybe, landmen.
Land people.
Land people. I like land people. That's
Well,
a
you
good
know,
show,
they've
by
got
the
a
way.
new miniseries about
That was a good show. It's been
Oh, yeah.
popular.
That is, it's great. Is that a good
Dark.
that. I'm personally offended by it.
Oh, I.
It's a Taylor Sheridan show, so at some point it's
Just for the
involved in
record.
work content.
For the record.
Yeah, always.
What next? Okay, well, I can't top
Speaking
that.
of cartels.
Let's separate that from what I'm about to say next. So this bill is relating to sellers' disclosures regarding water services for and water rights in residential real estate. This amends the seller's disclosure notice language and statute to add if the seller is aware of the name of the entity who regulates the water supply, the name of the entity responsible for billing the homeowner for water use, any excessive water use fees or water use pricing tiers applicable to the property, and the name of the entity responsible for maintaining the water service line to the property. And it also adds that TREC is going to promulgate a form that is a notice of groundwater service rights that are conveyed with the
So,
property.
so what's the number on this one?
This one is HB 2422.
Okay. And is there an intersection with this and what the gentleman this morning was talking about?
Yes, a little bit. So we had the sunset recommendation to look at, groundwater rights. That's something that the broker lawyer committee has been working on. This is actually a little more specific than what BLC has been talking about. And John George is here if you have any questions about that.
But it's basically what do those disclosures look like?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'd be just.
Easy one.
Yeah. All right, the next one is HB 2498, and the companion to that is SB 1053. So it's Leach and Hinosa, and it's relating to the consequences of a criminal conviction on a person's eligibility for an occupational license. So this one would require us to provide notice on our applications related to criminal history and convictions, and we would have to report certain things related to the number of licensing applications we received, the number of applications approved, the number denied for any reason, the number of applications denied because of conviction or deferred adjudication, and the number of criminal evaluation letters requested under 53.102. So this bill amends the criteria to suspend, revoke, or disqualify someone from having a license, and it allows the licensing authority to accept an application from an inmate in prison in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And if it's been more than 5 years since the conviction, certain offenses that would have automatically disqualified someone from licensure may not be automatically disqualifying. And there's a whole host of specific specific things that would apply or wouldn't apply. And it seems that, major issues or convictions like sexual assaults, that kind of stuff would still not be okay.
So
But in-
grant an issue to an actual prisoner. Grant a license to an actual prisoner.
Yeah, and so there's another one, SB 1080, that's kind of the same. It's by Royce West. And this bill provides for the issuance of a provisional license. And adds language allowing an inmate of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to be issued a provisional license for 6 months to begin on the date of release. So I thought you could.
These are more FYI
Yeah.
than anything, likely not
They'll probably
things that
die.
would pass, but these are making it easier to get the license.
It's more of just like
We'll
an
watch.
interesting tone of things that are coming through. And then as far as the bills, we're tracking 37 of them have been referred to Senate committees. There aren't any House committees composed right now, so nothing's going over there. And these bills include prohibiting certain foreign buyers, that was in your report, fraudulent deeds, another one that was in your report, and the bill that requires agencies to implement a priority system for considering public comment. So that one I think is of interest to you guys because you get a lot of public comments for all of our advisory committees, and we'd have to rank them basically. So do you have any questions about any of that? so far?
Well, no, I guess one for, folks who've been over at TR lately, when will they be filing or get somebody to carry their legislation?
It's great into my next section, which is
Oh.
our housekeeping bill.
Oh.
And so essentially, we're still discussing that with Texas Realtors. And before getting deeper into that, I just wanted to give you a reminder of what is in that housekeeping bill. So we've got the section on education. So this is requiring the broker responsibility course, regardless of whether you intend to sponsor someone. So that's going to be an application renewal for all brokers, allowing us to adjust qualifying education requirements by rule, and also for initial sales agent licenses. And then the inspector one requiring 4 hours of pre-licensing education for apprentice inspectors. Then broker associates, these two you probably remember. So providing notice of a broker associate complaint to the broker associate is associating with, and then indicating a broker associate relationship to a broker on our website. And then the next section of bills, or not bills, sorry, the next items that are part of the bills. So contact information. So you might recall SB 510, we had to take down all that information because we don't distinguish between whether it's personal, like you work from your home and it's your home address, or whether it's your business address. And so basically we're seeking the authority to be able to collect from license holders business contact information so that we can display it on the website. Since people are, they don't know if John Smith of Harris County is the John Smith they are looking for. And then another one, remove the yearly remittance to the general revenue fund. And then there were just a couple of housekeeping items, since we no longer regulate residential service companies, so home warranty companies. That happened a couple sessions ago. We've just been cleaning it up in this instance, and then replacing check with payment since we're trying to move paperless. So that's this. And then Abby's going to give you an update about some Texas Realtors related drafts.
One thing, thank you, Summer. Well,
Thank you.
on that. You asked when, and I think it will happen very soon that those filings happen. I don't believe, at least as of the last time I checked, that the House committees have been.
No, that's what I was saying. Yeah, so that's why we only have
So
Senate
they wait
committee
to see.
referrals.
That's why Scott's gonna be here in May.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once that happens, I think Texas Realtors will move quickly. They just need to know.
Right,
who the
right.
best case
Where to go, yeah.
Yeah.
That's.
So, as I know you all know, Texas Realtors, as many realtor organizations across the country, have been grappling with what exactly to do in light of the NAR settlement. And so they have been talking about a couple different options, statutory changes. And I think we're at the point where they would really like, I think your support, your feedback, your thoughts on tolerance. Yeah, that's a good word on some of these issues. So they proposed essentially 3 ideas. And I was just going to go through those and then you let me know what you think. So the first idea is to require written agreements for buyers. Not necessarily a representation agreement. It can be a representation agreement, but a written agreement. As I'm sure many of you know, this is a requirement by the settlement to have an agreement. I think the language is prior to touring a home. So I think this is very much in line with that requirement. But essentially requiring written agreements either prior to showing or if there isn't a showing, at least prior to an offer being submitted on behalf of a buyer. So that was the first area that they're proposing. The second is to allow what they have been referring to as like a non-representation status, a limited non-representation status for certain license holders who are representing well, not representing in this case, buyers when showing a home. So it's in a really limited situation, really limited scope. But basically that if these certain factors are satisfied, that the license holder would not be considered to be representing the buyer when all they're doing is showing them the property. So kind of
Showing services, showing agent.
yeah, like it's more of a customer, like recognizing the customer relationship as opposed to a client relationship. So trying to carve that out in statute.
Would you still necessarily be considered sub-agent to the seller then?
Well, that's
That's
that's a
that.
great
That's
segue.
another part.
Wrote this. So the third area is getting rid of sub-agency, repealing sub-agency, essentially.
Glory, glory, hallelujah.
Yeah.
So that's
Amen.
kind of the three areas or three issues they're considering. And so what is your tolerance for any or all of those?
And a lot of this is
Aye.
what we don't weigh into very often.
Tolerance for that.
Yeah, in all three cases. I think, number one, sure, it's part of the deal and we should be doing it anyways. Number two, the limited non-rep, as long as we're in that customer language, the question there is compensation. That's because, I mean, I don't know about your brokerage's internal Facebook page, but my brokerage's internal Facebook page is who can show a house tomorrow, I'll pay you $25. Well, really, they ought to be paying me $25 and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And same thing with these showing services is you're paying a service which may or may not even have a broker's license, probably doesn't.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's a compensation issue and sub-agency, please,
Yeah.
please, take it out.
The
back.
showing is more, I think it's more being proposed because the short form still establishes representation,
Right, it's awful.
even though it's not exclusive. This is just the ability to say, I don't represent you, it's not exclusive, I can show you this house. It's still a licensed activity and you must have a license, but it gets rid of that word representation.
For it.
The representation prior to contract does not have to be at the door. There is movement that you don't even show without representation. And this is representation from contract to closing, basically. But
It leaves flexibility before that.
right, it
Right,
gives
for the
flexibility.
different business.
I mean, we're using the short form to meet, greet, date before we propose. And this gives you the ability to do that without even the word representation
Yeah, the
being in
problem with
there.
the short form is, hey, paragraph 2 is I'm your agent, and then paragraph 5 is like, maybe
Yeah.
not.
And so, and then sub-agency would certainly eliminate, that area.
Unintended,
Comments on the
unintended consequences.
Leslie, comments?
I think requiring a representation form is perfect. I've always thought it was required back in the day.
Yeah.
I've always used one. I think
Yeah.
sub-agency needs to go away.
I agree.
Amen.
And a lot of the representation, like, I get a listing agreement, but I sit down with them for an hour. A purchaser, I'm not gonna get them to come in for an hour and a half. I'm gonna chase the lead, get it, then capture them. And this gives you the ability to open the door and show the house. Mark?
Yeah. No, amen.
Barbara?
Okay.
Right. That's what we needed to just kind of give them the, yes, we can.
The temperature. High five.
Yeah, exactly.
This came up Friday, Saturday?
Saturday
night.
afternoon. Yeah. But to be fair, things keep evolving for them and I think are really looking for that innovation of what could work for all business models. And I think this could,
This is a
yeah.
step in the right
I
direction.
just think that every time there's new legislation, the wind changes a little bit and there comes a new form or new. this, or new that. If you look at the set of documents that came out June 20th, by the time they were mandatory for use August 17th, those forms had changed 3 times.
Yeah, that's right.
One of them changed the night before.
Yeah.
But they can do that.
Right,
We can't.
right.
All right.
So the only last agenda item is just request for potential future workshop agenda items. We won't have one in May, so this would be for August. If you want to think about it, certainly can, but if there's anything right now, someone knows if they want.
All right. Adjourned.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Everybody.
Thank everybody.
I agree.
Fortunately,